guys, and welcome back to our channel. I'm Sarah Kate.
Hello, I'm Stuart.
And today we are going to show you how to play Sky Team.
Sky Team is a 2-player cooperative game only, but it has just won the Spiel des Jahres for 2024. So this is an exciting and excellent game already, before we even go into the details. But let's show you how it works.
We have set up the game as the first basic scenario to try and land safely in Montreal airport. So, to win the game, there has to be no airplanes on this approach track, and for the approach track for the airport to get into the to go down into this space, all of the flaps and the landing gear to have the switches to be green. For the airplane to be completely horizontal on its axis, and for the speed to be less than the brakes.
This is all before this is like our altitude, which is going to go down one every turn as like a turn timer, and this will drop down. We need to do it before we fit. This is our final turn here. So how do we do this? You can see on the board that there are blue spaces and there are orange spaces. We have a set of blue and orange dice each. Blue is the pilot, orange is the co-pilot. Now, one of the main parts of the game is during a turn you cannot communicate with each other. You can talk tactics at the beginning of a turn, but before you roll those dice. So these dice aren't visible to the other players. So if I was to roll these dice into my little hidey hole in here, the pilot cannot know what numbers I've got, because that's breaking the rules of the game. But we've got these numbers to work with. Can you see that 2 of the spaces on each side have an exclamation mark? These spaces must have a die in them before the end of the turn, or we lose the game. Being a co-op, there's about 3 different ways to lose the game and only 1 way to win. So we need to manage a lot of different things to be able to do that. We've got the flaps and we've got the landing gear. We need to place a die over the course of the game with the correct number to flip those switches. In this case, on the landing gear, when we move this, we'll move this one forward. I'll explain how that works in a second. Similarly, on the orange ones, we're going to put that in there and we'll move that one forward as well. In this case, the orange ones must go in order. The blue ones don't have to, but when we come to the brakes, the blue ones again have to go in order. That's some of our dice placement. I'll come to the axis. If you can imagine turbulence in an aeroplane, sometimes you feel like you're sort of twisting side to side a little bit now and again. If the die numbers are offset enough where we go too far, those X's mean we lose the game. So during a turn, I might play a 5 in there, and then obviously eventually my pilot, if the 3 goes in there, there's a difference of 2. So this would go to that side. We're still okay. But at the end of the game, in the very last turn, this needs to be exactly level to be able to win the game. One of our other positions that we have to do is our engines here. So this is a little slightly more complicated. At the minute, we've got these icons in these numbers. If we were to place dice in between this bracket, this means our altitude will drop by 1, or the approach track drops by 1, which is making us closer. If the numbers we used were less, let's just swap that out for here, this means this track would not move, or if we had a higher number, the track would drop twice. If there is ever a plane in the way, we lose. But that brings us on to another space on the board that we can use, which are radio in for help on here. I think that's radio the control tower. If we put a die that's equal to, if I've put a 2 here, we can remove a plane that is 2 spaces away, and that removes from the approach track. The co-pilot has 2 spaces for this, but the pilot only has 1. Again, if we just use that as an example, 1 would come off. During the game, we need to clear all this off before the end of the game. If we move further down the board, we've got the breaks. We need exactly 2, 4, 6 from the blue player in order during the game to move these across. I'll just put that one there for the moment. We move this one forward, and then late in subsequent turns, if we was to do that, we'd obviously move that as well. This isn't a game end requirement, but obviously it'll make us easier. We need our speed to be lower than this number at the very end. We should have the approach track all the way down to the bottom. Obviously these will have moved up several places, so the number will be less than the blue marker, but our speed needs to be less than this. So these numbers need to be very small in the final turn to be able to land without crashing. We've got a couple more places down here. This is our coffee break. We can, if we've ever got a spare die that we need, or we need to manipulate the dice, we can spend a die in here, and we're going to add this coffee cup token. This will allow us to spend a plus or a -1 on a die. But obviously if the orange player was to get it, we're not communicating. The blue player might use it for themselves, and the orange player was thinking that they were having it in mind. Sometimes it's the way it works a little bit. Sometimes you can get a little bit of synergy to each other by playing dice in a certain order where you're telling the other player certain things without telling them anything. It's a hard way to explain. So for example, let's just remove the dice from here. If the orange player had opened with their axis number on here, the blue player might think, well, I've got something I might leave that for a while. I don't need to do that straight away because I've got something that will cope with that. They could have a 4 handy where it only move one side, which isn't a problem. So they might place one of their other die over here instead. Obviously this is giving information to the other players without just copycatting each other. There's a bit of tips and strategy involved in such things. We also have, I've forgotten to mention, a reroll token. We can, in this particular scenario, we earn 2 of them. They go in here. When one player chooses to spend it, both players may re-roll any number of their dice as a one-off, and then that token is spent.
And this is just an example of what it looks like at the end of game. So the airport track is, the approach track for the airport is down to the very last one. The turn track is also down, so the airplane is trying to land in the airport. We have put the airplane's axis is completely horizontal. The speed is either equal or lower than the brakes. The flaps and the landing gear are all green lights, so we have won the game. The passengers burst into applause. We have landed the plane smoothly, and we have won.
So I really enjoy this game. I can't stress enough how much we enjoy it. With playing at home 2-player, it's always good to play something cooperative now and again, not necessarily always competitive against each other. So that way we both get the feel good of a win. That was just the opening sort of entry scenario. The game can get harder. There's a difficulty level of green, yellow and red, which will increase the difficulty as we play the game. We don't have to just do that airport. The game comes with quite a few different ones as well, with shorter tracks, longer tracks, abilities, other challenges to include in the game at the same time to make it more difficult for us and to keep a bit more variety to keep us playing it again.
There's a lot more in the box that comes out as well.
Yes.
Different components.
You guys can discover that for yourselves, like we have, but we've really enjoyed it. We can't stress enough how much we do enjoy this game. What would you give it out of 10?
Ooh, I think a solid 8 out of 10.
8?
Yeah.
I'm going to go for the full 10. I loved it. I love it.
Wow.
I think it's brilliant. There's also an expansion coming soon. There's also an expansion coming soon called Turbulence, which is like a small pack with more scenarios in it.
I can't wait to get that.
So that'd be quite cool as well. There's I'm just going to grab some of the other bits and bobs as well. So we get an intern track. So you need to train new people to work for you before the end of the game. There's what we call a kerosene track. It's like a fuel gauge. You need to be able to keep this from going to 0 to avoid defeat again that way. There is also an extra die. This has different functions in it, but the main one is to add more planes to the approach track to make it more difficult for us again. But it's so much fun. I love it.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time.
Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time with some more tutorials and videos on some of the games that are available. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye bye.